There's plenty that's taken place in the news cycle centered around politics. Just yesterday, we saw the ANC marking 100 days of the Government of National Unity. We've just heard from the DA making all manner of allegations against Bangeza Lusufi, who of course is the chair of the ANC in Gauteng. And there's been sentiment around the SACP, an alliance partner of the ANC, snubbing yesterday's event because, of course, of just how disgruntled they feel about this Government of National Unity. Let's try to distill all of that for you, help you to think through it, bring in our political editor, Mzwandile Mbeje, who's with us here in studio this morning. And do we dare make sense of it, is the first question. Shall we begin with yesterday's festivities and just the gathering itself? You know, I said, perhaps in a cheeky way at the top of the hour, that yesterday the ANC branded that gathering as a celebration, which boggles the mind for some people because the Government of National Unity is a result of them losing an election, which is not really something to be celebrated.
Well, maybe let's just give them a bit of credit. And they actually said it's not a celebration, it's a reflection.
Right.
So which basically means they are not necessarily celebrating that they did not win elections, but the fact of the matter is that the reality is such that they had to form a government, and that government, they chose Government of National Unity. 100 days have passed, and I think we are close to 120 now. They said, let's reflect. Was the decision the correct one? Could we have done better? And it would appear from the utterances of the president is that that was the best option at the time. And it remains the best option because he even went back to 1994 to say, even when we had the majority, so this is what we decided we will do. Just now, the conditions have been different. We are at 40%. Government has to be formed because services must be brought to people. So we have to do it.
Yeah, and yeah, I suppose in some ways he did concede that as unprecedented as the election was, the arrangement itself isn't. But as you also point out, the circumstance is completely different. People will argue that in 1994, the ANC had the luxury to, right? And in this year...
But I think the ANC government has always had one or two individuals from the party outside of its own, despite having 69%, 60%. I think in their minds, they've always had that inclusive aspect into government, I guess perhaps to kind of like assist in their thinking, because sometimes if you all belong together, you may end up thinking the same way, but there will be someone who will come from outside to say, I see what you guys are doing. Can we not do it this way? So they've always had that. So yeah, I think it's one of the things that is quite interesting for me.
It is indeed. All right. It hasn't been smooth sailing. I think the president admitted that yesterday as well, especially because of the utterances of the SACP, who I mentioned a bit earlier on. I wonder how you reckon the party could deal with this, because so far, it seems the centre is somewhat still holding, but I shudder at the thought of what might happen if the SACP sentiments pick up momentum.
It's very interesting, and I think I've been looking at the SACP, looking at their conduct and analyzing why they perhaps pronounce what they are pronouncing. You can see it's very difficult for them. Here is the alliance partner that needs to run government, and somehow the people, the SACP, remember, these people are in alliance, so they don't have to instruct each other, they can advise each other, but at the end of the day, they remain independent. So the fact that the SACP didn't attend those reflections perhaps was to send a statement. But at the same time, Ayanda, you still have your own members in cabinet of the GNU. I mean, the chairperson is part of the GNU cabinet. So yes, you are protesting, we understand, but the fact of the matter is you are protesting against something you are very much part of. So what is the better option? Do you choose that which the PAC advanced? You remember when people were lambasting the PAC of having joined the government, they say the PAC felt, you know what, we think we'll be better able to influence the direction within than from outside. So the SACP is inside, but there's a sentiment that it feels it's not really being listened to, perhaps saying the government or the ANC listens more to parties like the DA. Is it based on facts, or is it on perception, or it's something ideologically? It's something that's very interesting. But I guess the meeting that is scheduled to happen, which, by the way, was supposed to happen yesterday, between the SACP and the ANC, but because of the events that were happening, so it was somehow postponed. We look to see what exactly is going to be happening. And for me, the other thing that has always been an issue with the SACP, the reconfiguration of the alliance. I think that is just a buzzword. They've been speaking about it for more than 10 years.
What does it even mean?
So they basically want the alliance which will be the center in terms of decision making.
Right.
But the ANC has always said, no, it's more about really co-governing in that way. Remember, they still remain independent. If then we decide that the alliance is the center, so which means the decisions must be decided by the alliance, so somehow the ANC's power is gone, SACP's power is gone, so I guess maybe the alliance may not even be necessary. It will just have to be one party.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it sounds like in some ways. And I am yet to see a country where the NEC of the ANC is not where decisions are made for that party. But anyway, the SACP has also in the past spoken about perhaps running for elections themselves. I wonder if you reckon that resolution might come to fore.
And I suspect, but that's my own suspicion, I suspect when they looked at the outcome of the results and how a party like MK simply tapped into the kind of unhappiness within the ANC or even the other parties, and then they were able to pull off that kind of a vote. And I suspect there is that in the SACP to say maybe had we offered an alternative earlier, perhaps we could have been the ones. So, but as I've said this, analyzing the situation, looking at the dynamics and everything else, you just make your own sums and come up with some sort of decision.
What seems to be at the center of the disagreements in some respects between the ANC and the SACP is also centered around the personhood of Banyaza Lesufi. Yeah. We know, his name has come up multiple times, including in that media briefing held by the DA just a short while ago. I wonder what we should be making of this, Mzwai, because unless I'm just naive, but I'm not quite sure if I saw this coming, that, Lesufi would be at the center of what seems to be disagreements between the SACP, the ANC, and in some ways the DA.
As soon as the government of Gauteng was not able to create a GPU that would include parties like the DA replicating what is happening nationally, already you could see the signs there that there is a lot that is not going to be agreed to at a provincial level. So, and Lesufi has been very open. In fact, obviously he's not going against the wishes of the national leadership, but he's been very clear and open in terms of wanting to work with parties like the MK and the EFF, something that is not necessarily favored up there at the moment. So given that that he has to be directed by what has been agreed upon, but what his sentiments and his executive feel like, so those issues are to be expected to really come. I mean, we've just seen the election of the mayor in Tshwane, which completely excluded the DA. And we have seen the kinds of attacks from the DA against Lesufi. And even within the ANC, I mean, he had to be called to Little House to explain some of his utterances. So we may not have seen it coming, but as soon as they were not able to follow what the National had done, so you could see something was building up. And this is not the end of it.
I was about to ask you that exact question. I mean, how do you put a cap on this? Because if it does gain momentum, it might very well cascade into something way more significantly a threat at a national level.
And you see politics, Ayanda, is that as much as you're looking at the events of the now, they sometimes talk about the events of the future. And everyone knows that the current president, in 3 years, he is stepping down as the ANC president. So the interests, undeclared as they are, you can already see that some of what is happening is influenced by the interests of the future.
It's an interesting statement, because I heard Paul Mzwandile yesterday say it's too soon to talk about that, but maybe he's also just playing politics.
And this is politics.
Indeed. All right, Mzwandile Mbeje, you're the expert. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. We appreciate that. Mzwandile Mbeje, of course, the politics editor here on the SABC News Channel. We'll certainly keep watching all of those developments for you throughout the course of the day.